you all on behalf of TERI to the webinar titled Role of Nature-Based Solutions in Carbon Sequestration, an Opportunity to be Explored. Today's webinar, that is a part of the COP26 Webinar Series being held at the World Sustainable Development Summit 2021 in partnership with the British High Commission in India. The World Sustainable Development Summit is the annual flagship event of TERI, and the 2021 edition of WSDS will be hosted virtually from 10 to 12 February 2021. It will be addressing the theme, redefining our common future, safe and secure environment for all, and it will focus on the current crisis and the roadmap that the nations of the world need to adopt for a greener recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, we would like to play a short video for you. Can we have the video on the screen, please? Thank you so much. So as evident from the video, worldwide and within India, communities are struggling with the realities of increased climate variability and climate change together with rapid loss of biodiversity, declining farm productivity, and the rising cost of cultivation associated with depleting and degrading natural resources. However, the technological solutions currently available for mitigating and adapting climate change are expensive and difficult to implement, especially by the developing countries. Hence, nature-based solutions that are defined as actions to protect, manage, and restore ecosystems, which in turn ensure human well-being and address societal challenges, are once again being explored for their potential to reduce greenhouse gases while enhancing livelihood benefits and ecosystem services. Today's webinar seeks to understand diverse set of nature-based solutions along with their cost effectiveness, policy implications, and the overall approach that may be deployed in order to move towards a low carbon path, resulting in reducing the emissions gap. Now, without further ado, I request Dr. Ajay Mathur to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Mathur is the Director General of TERI and the member of the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. Very good morning or afternoon to you wherever you are in the world. It is a great pleasure for us at TERI to partner with the British High Commission here in Delhi on a series of 4 webinars which cover the 4 of the 5 key areas that we believe are important as far as moving climate change ahead are concerned, and which are the themes of the next Conference of the Parties, the COP meeting that will occur in England in November 2021. It is important that we focus on these issues for a variety of reasons. These have included electric mobility. We all agree that we have moved ahead on decarbonization of electricity. Our next great challenge is how do we decarbonize the transport sector? So that was our first webinar. The second webinar, which we did together, was on enabling green finance. Because no matter what you say, the first cost of greener solutions is, at least in all the cases that we have found till now, higher than that of the existing solutions at this moment of time. Though, of course, their lifetime costs are less because their operating costs are also less. And it is quite possible volumes increase, even the first cost to become less. But we do have a hump to cross. The third seminar, which is today, we are looking at nature-based solutions, where we look at the kinds of interventions here: forestry, biodiversity, agriculture. What is it that we can do with nature to make sure that the emissions from nature reduce, and in fact sequestration increases? And tomorrow we will be discussing adaptation and resilience, because no matter what, there's a large amount of atmosphere. We need to manage it. While we, on the one side, we want to make sure that we do not put up more carbon dioxide, we do need to ensure that we manage what we have done. So that's the broad theme of the interventions that we are doing over the 4 days of this week. But coming back to today's meeting, I'm extremely glad that we are looking at the issue of nature-based solutions, which is particularly important for a country like India, where a vast amount of the population still lives in rural areas which are land and have land-based occupations, either directly or indirectly. In other words, their livelihoods are dependent on what they get out of forests, what they get out of agriculture, what they get out of a range of so-called nature-based solutions. It is important, therefore, that we look at these kinds of activities can be reduced, or at least the carbon emissions from them can be reduced. The activities would keep going, but we need to ensure that the emissions are reduced and sequestration is maximized. So whether we look at forest communities, where we look at sustaining the forestry biomass use of communities. Can I request colleagues to mute themselves if they are not speaking? There's a lot of background noise. Okay, so that's the first point. The second is that we also need to see how is it that in agricultural practices we can move towards, say, low carbon, low water agriculture, but with the output being at least the same or more than what we have today. These are some of the interventions that we there are states in India where there is a goal of creating water bodies, and those water bodies would have very much here and now impacts. Water bodies across the state in each village. But if you connect the water bodies, then you've got great corridors for biodiversity as well. In urban areas, we've been looking at urban forests as corridors and preservers of biodiversity. We need to see how we can move them beyond the few cities that we have them, whether it is Mumbai or Delhi or Chandigarh, into the urban planning heartland of the community of urban planners. In other words, there are lots of opportunities, but we need to see how we can take them further. So without further ado, let me hand this over to you. And especially, I'm looking forward to the special remarks by Ms. Andrea Ledward, who is the Director for International Biodiversity and Climate in the Department of the UK Department of the Environment, and then to the keynote address by Dr. Vinod Mathur, who is the Chairman of the National Biodiversity Authority. Back to you, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I now request Ms. Andrea Ledward, Director of International Biodiversity and Climate at DEFRA, United Kingdom, to deliver the special remarks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Hello. So, yeah, I'm from the UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, where I lead on international biodiversity and climate, and particularly the UK government's international nature strategy going into 2021. So quite a privilege. And thank you very much for inviting me here today to discuss the importance of nature-based solutions and to talk briefly about the UK's ambition on this agenda, particularly where we're working closely in partnership with India and other countries. So it's very important to recognise that climate change has a profound impact on nature, with the subsequent loss of biodiversity being linked not just to human activities and land use practices, but also more frequent and changing weather patterns that we're all experiencing. The NbS, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, states that biodiversity is declining faster than at any time in human history, with human actions threatening more species with global extinctions now than ever before. And the WWF 2018 Living Planet report estimates there have been an overall decline in vertebrate species population sizes of 60% in just 40 years. So degradation of land and resources is negatively impacting the well-being of at least 3.2 billion people. And we think it's costing about 10% of annual GDP in loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services. So nature is not separate to growth, development and well-being. In fact, it is an essential part of it. Break that relationship down and then we break down our ability to prosper. So the current outlook for how we're treating nature doesn't look very good. But the good news is that protecting nature and using nature-based solutions can in fact be a solution on the front line of tackling climate change, Paris alignment and protecting the hundreds of millions of people whose livelihoods depend on it. For example, in farming and fisheries, as well as delivering wider environmental benefits from clean air, healthy soils and also recreation. Through nature, we can build resilience against future pandemics, as well as reducing people's exposure to future disasters, such as catastrophic floods, droughts, or increasing the resilience of key systems, such as sustainable national and international food supply chains. Our land and coastal marine ecosystems can provide up to a third of cost-effective climate mitigation globally, and a global transition to low-emission sustainable land use and food systems could unlock over 500 billion in business opportunities by 2030. And over $1 trillion of hidden costs could be avoided. So restoring our natural habitats has a myriad of potential benefits for helping communities to adapt to climate change, from natural flood management to urban cooling, as well as helping us to support the resilience of ecosystems themselves to climate change. For example, if we can improve the condition and diversity within and connectivity between our wildlife habitats, this will help species survive in their existing locations and allow them to move towards more sustainable climates where necessary. Restoring and expanding habitats will benefit nature, but nature in its turn can also help us to mitigate and adapt to climate change. But nature is by no means a silver bullet. We still need significant emissions reductions from other sectors to keep within the Paris Agreement, but there's no denying nature-based solutions will play a key role in getting us there. So that's why I look forward to very much hearing from other speakers on how nature-based solutions are being championed in India. In the UK, we're developing and implementing a range of solutions at home. For example, we're committed to increasing tree planting across the UK to 30,000 hectares per year by 2025 through a £640 million Nature for Climate Fund. A Green Recovery Challenge Fund was set up to support environmental NGOs of up to £80 million to kickstart a programme of nature-based projects while creating and retaining jobs in conservation. And a few weeks ago, an ambitious Agriculture Act passed and became a law, which provides a legislative framework to replace our agricultural support systems and subsidy under the Common Agricultural Policy. In England in future, farmers will be paid to produce public goods, such as environmental or animal welfare improvements. In 2018, we published the 25-year Environment Plan, our plan for improving the environment within a generation, which is a living blueprint for the environment covering the next quarter of a century. It's an ambitious project. We have an environment bill currently going through the UK Parliament that will help us lock in new systems for the future. On a global scale, we're funding nature-based solutions through our international climate finance. Work is also underway on a review of economics of biodiversity led by Professor Dasgupta, which will be published in the next few months, setting out the links between ecosystem health and economic prosperity. It will assess the economic value of biodiversity and identify actions which will improve both biodiversity and economic outcomes. It's evidence of the UK's belief that nature should be at the heart of climate change solutions. At the UN Climate Action Summit in September 2019, our Prime Minister announced a new £220 million international biodiversity fund. So nature-based solutions are a top international priority for us in 2021, looking ahead to COP26. We also played a leading role in negotiating the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, which was launched at UNGA in September this year. To date, 79 nations in the European Commission have signed up to this ambitious agreement, committing to 10 critical actions to put nature on a path to recovery by 2030. We very much look forward to working with leaders from around the world in the run-up to COP26 and beyond to really continue this momentum and make sure it translates into genuine transformative action on the ground. So ahead of COP26, we're building a new government-to-government dialogue between producer and consumer countries to collectively agree principles for collaboration and a roadmap for action. Over 80% of deforestation is driven by the production and consumption of internationally traded agricultural commodities. So it's essential that producer and consumer countries work closely together to protect forests while promoting trade and development. We're planning to do this through a series of senior official and ministerial events over the next year in the run-up to COP26. And the collaboration is intended to continue beyond COP26 to foster long-term cooperation on this critical issue. As the world's largest palm oil consumer and strong existing efforts on the sustainable production of coffee, tea and spices, we'd be delighted to work closely with India through this dialogue, such as welcoming India's participation in the global launch event in February. Similarly, building resilience for sustainable agriculture and food systems is a key interest for countries in all regions of the world, and we need a land use transition to match the clean energy revolution. To advance this agenda, we will build on the Just Rural Transition Initiative launched with UK support at UNCAS, accelerating a transition to sustainable land, agriculture, food and natural ecosystems, to mobilise investment, innovation and policy commitments and strengthen public support for climate resilient, sustainable agriculture. Marine protection is also absolutely critical, and we will champion the protection of marine ecosystems, encouraging countries to join the UK-led 30 by 30 Global Ocean Alliance in support of protecting at least 30% of the global oceans within marine protected areas and other areas-based conservation measures by 2030. So the UK is fully behind the agenda. India also has a very strong track record on preserving forests, biodiversity and wildlife conservation through, for example, your commitment to restoring 26 million hectares of forest by 2030 and initiatives such as Projects Lion and Dolphin. 2021 is a landmark year for action on climate and nature. Nature-based solutions are a real opportunity for us to build back greener and more resilient from COVID-19. So the time is now for action, and we look forward very much to working with all of you to make sure 2021 delivers for nature, climate, and all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea, for giving your valuable insights as well as UK's perspective on today's topic of deliberation. Before we proceed, just a small announcement. We request everyone to switch on their video cameras as the session is going live on YouTube. But please keep your mics on mute. Thank you so much. I now request Dr. V.B. Mathur to deliver the keynote address. Dr. Mathur is a 1983 batch retired IFS officer from West Bengal cadre, who's presently working as chairperson, National Biodiversity Authority. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm audible now?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Good evening. For some, it's good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a privilege and pleasure for me to be keynote on role of nature and opportunity to be explored. This event organized by the British High Commission in India. At the outset, I would like to compliment the organizers for very appropriately selecting this theme, because this theme seeks to understand the diverse set of nature-based solutions along with their cost effectiveness, the policy implications, and the overall approach that needs to be deployed by countries in the world in order to reduce, among other things, the emission gap. Not only this, the key focus area for deliberation in the webinar today, where a large number of experts are participating, it includes land use and watershed management, how to look at low emissions, and interrelated issues of agriculture, agroforestry, ecosystem conservation, and restoration. So a whole lot of ideas have been packed in for today's webinar. It is also envisaged that the deliberations that we will do today will also help in strategizing the implementation of the nature-based solutions to move towards a low carbon path and implementation of a carbon neutrality policy. I was attending a webinar where India and the Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education is setting up of a center of excellence to deal with land neutrality issues. So I think this is very, very important. And there again, Terry is involved, so you have a role in both the events. But I feel it would be nice to spend a few moments to define what these nature-based solutions are and why have they become so important that we are all discussing about actions to take. In a way, these nature-based solutions as actions that protect, that help to sustainably manage and restore or modify ecosystem in response to societal challenges. So see, these are now all being called as societal challenges. They are no longer issues which or biodiversity or climate. These are issues which pose a challenge to the society, because these solutions can provide a range of environmental, social, and economic benefits, and these are indispensable for both climate change mitigation and adaptation. Now, I must say that our planet is facing two unprecedented environmental crises. One, as we know, is the biodiversity loss, and the other one is climate change. And I want to recall a very recent report, the NbS, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, a report in 2019. It says very clearly that if the business as usual scenario continues, then we might lose up to 1 million species of plants and animals. Now, this is indeed a very worrisome scenario, and we must gear up to take action. Now, when we talk of biodiversity, climate change, and nature-based solutions, the causes of these challenges are also interrelated. And therefore, their solutions ought to in a very complex dynamics that we face challenges which are common to biodiversity, which are common to climate change, and therefore the solutions that we need today have also to be common. But at the same time, I must reiterate that India's heritage embraces nature and environmental consciousness and also promotes a genuine love for nature, which are deep rooted in its tradition. So the CBD agenda may talk about living in harmony with nature, but for we or us Indians, it is not something that we need to begin now. For time immemorial, people have learned to live in harmony with nature. India is also ensuring that following our rich cultural traditions, we continue to make sustainable lifestyles an integral part of its solutions to climate change, taking into account the massive pressures of development, the massive economic growth imperatives. Yes, I do agree that these are big challenges before us, but the harmony, the solutions lie in what we call as sustainable lifestyles. There is also another definition of nature-based solutions that can be said like this: the use of nature. Mind you, the use of nature in tackling challenges such as climate change, food security, water resources, disaster risk reduction, in order to conserve and use biodiversity in a sustainable manner. I must say that when we started talking about conservation 20, 30 years ago, I recall my joining the Forest Service, trying to understand that. From those times to what we are now witnessing, the concepts, the principle, the understanding has all changed. And therefore, we need to wear a new hat or a new cap, whatever you call it. Gaining increasing attention from scientists on one hand to practitioners on the other, because they have the potential to provide solutions to enhance ecological, social, and economic resilience. And that is the reason we are moving more and more towards them. There are a range of co-benefits which nature-based solutions can provide. And therefore, cross-sectoral multifunctionality is the main factor that makes NbS interesting for stakeholders. And it is also providing, I must say, a very strong option for investment for sustainable development. So see, these are some of the issues which we were not talking earlier as a forester community or a conservation community. We have to reach out to investing options. Now, it would be interesting to spend a few moments on finding out who are the key actors in this dialogue, in this discourse that we are having today, and it would continue after this event also. So very recently, a review of literature has been done, and I'm talking of a 2019 literature review done by Sarbi et al. They have tried to identify that there are 4 levels of actors in our quest for finding nature-based solutions. At the micro level are citizens like you and me, landowners, business owners, citizen groups, and of course a range of non-governmental organizations. These are what have been defined as the micro level actors. But then there are meso level actors working at the city level, which includes our municipal departments, our water boards, and similar local actors. The point I'm making is that we need to look at what these actors are, what their role is, and how do we engage them. Coming to the macro level actors, working at the regional level, at the national level, at the international level, and these include regional and national authorities, and definitely the international organizations have their own interest in that. Not only this, we can't just stop looking at the micro and meso level. There are transboundary actors also. And these actors, they transcend the geographical boundaries, the organizational boundaries, and they foster relationships between networks, among producers, among users of NbS. So what is evident now? When we do this classification of actors, that we have a very wide pool of stakeholders and actors that we must reach out to in order to make NbS a reality. At this moment, definitely it is being talked about, but we need to take a number of steps to make it a reality. And I'm so pleased to see that today's virtual event, which we have participants from United Kingdom to different places of India, is a step in the right direction. Now, while we do acknowledge that biodiversity and nature are part of the climate solutions, there are several barriers. And these barriers, interestingly, they manifest in different forms to limit or to minimize the effectiveness of the nature-based solutions. So see, unless we understand our barriers, unless we know how to unless we deal with them, our effectiveness of finding a nature-based solution will always be limited. So what are these barriers? I have no hesitation in saying that finance, both public finance and private finance, that we all need for financing the innovative nature-based solutions is top of the line. So if finance remains a barrier or continues to remain a barrier, we may not be able to achieve what we want to achieve. The stronger political will and political will of the importance of understanding the role which nature plays, and at the same time, our citizens also need to have a buy-in. So when we are talking of nature-based solutions, it is not that somebody else is going to come and help us out. Every single citizen has a role to play. And there is obviously, when we move on this direction, there is a constraint of the capacity. Where are the technical skills? Where are the knowledge holders? Where is the knowledge existing to implement the NbS projects? So what I'm trying to say that we need to look at this wide spectrum of challenges on one side, on barriers on one side, on limitations on one side. And therefore, this is a very right time that we are now looking at these solutions and these issues in a very holistic manner. Today, large number of people are realizing that NbS holds a promise. It is a means to address a number of societal challenges, whether we are talking of climate change, whether we are talking of social challenges or economic benefits which are there. Finally, I must say that we have a long way to go. We have made some baby steps in the right direction, aligned to the responsibilities of the role what civil society can play, what governance can play, what citizens can play. But three things I would like to flag. These are, as we go the NbS route, we need to look at the philosophy of co-creation. What can we do with the help of co-creation? What can we do with the help of co-implementation? Because it's not that either or. We need to bring in as many players as possible over there. And definitely, it is also a co-governance issue. So as you look at the program for this consultation today, I do find elements of these co-creation, of co-implementation, and of co-governance in that. And finally, I would say that NbS has the potential. And when I say has the potential, there is scientific evidence which is there that up to a third of CO2 mitigation can be addressed by nature-based solutions, but there is a rider. The rider is that these solutions have to be conceived appropriately. These have to be delivered appropriately. Because if the conception or the conceptual understanding is not there, or if the delivery is inappropriate, then we cannot expect that the co-benefits will be available to address the multiple challenges. So with these words, I compliment for providing this opportunity, and I am sure that in the remaining dialogue which will follow now, we will have a number of experts and speakers elaborating upon the idea that how nature-based solutions can form a kind of a means to deal with a crisis, or whether you call it as a biodiversity crisis or a climate crisis or a crisis which includes biodiversity and climate. This is the way to go ahead. Thank you very much. Once again, I give back the mic or the opportunity back to the organizers. Thank you very much once again.
So thank you so much, sir. Your thought-provoking address has definitely set a perfect platform for the speakers to deliberate on strategizing implementation of nature-based solutions to move towards a low-carbon path. I would once again like to thank all our delegates participating in the opening session for their time. Ladies and gentlemen, as we get ready for our panel discussion focusing on forestry and biodiversity related NbS and their role in carbon sequestration, we have an interesting polling question for you all. Can we please have the polling question on the screen for our audience? Thank you so much. So the question is, which among the following ecosystem has the potential to sequester maximum carbon from the environment? You have four options, A, B, C, and D. And I would request you all to select the appropriate response. And please do click the submit button. Otherwise, your response would not be recorded. So the hint is that one of them is the right answer. So please go ahead and you can select one of the answers and you can record your response, but please hit the submit button. We have about half a minute to do so. And then we will start with our panel discussion. Okay, so the response is coming in fast. Those of you who have not yet responded, please go ahead and submit your responses. We'll close the poll in a few moments. Please do click the submit button. And the time is up. We're now closing the poll. Let me share the results with everyone. Okay, so 25% of you have voted for forest, 11% have voted for grasslands, deserts we have none, and 14% for wetlands. Actually, the right answer is wetlands. One may think that forests can sequester maximum carbon, but that's not the case. It's actually the wetlands, the marshes, the peatlands, which have the potential to sequester maximum carbon. So this was just food for thought for you all. Now let's start with our panel discussion, focusing on the forestry and biodiversity related NbS. The panel will be chaired by Dr. S.S. Negi. Dr. Negi is a 1980 batch retired IFS officer from Himachal Pradesh cadre. He retired as Director General Forest, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and is presently working as Vice Chairman, Uttarakhand Rural Development and Migration Commission. The panelists for this session are Dr. J.V. Sharma, Director Land Resources Division, Terry, Mr. Ajay Kumar Lal, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Law and Justice, retired, and Mr. Sandeep Roy Chaudhary, Director of VNV Advisory Services. Just a small announcement for our audience here before we get started. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, please type them in your question and answer box or the chat box in your WebEx control panel, and the name of the panelist the question is addressed to. The chair will bring them up at the end during the designated question and answer session. Also, I would request all the speakers again to keep their videos on as the session is streaming live on YouTube. Before we begin, I would like to give a brief introduction to the theme for this panel. May I have the presentation on the screen, please? I promise you this will be clicked. Next slide, please. Do I have the rights to change the slides here?
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, yes. Or if you can just change the slide for me, please, that will be wonderful. No, this is not the one. There must be another one that I had shared with you. Anyways, we'll just skip the presentation for now. Let me just just talk about it. We all know that, and it was recorded also, that forests are probably the most well-known nature-based solutions for climate change, as their low-cost carbon mitigation option. But as I said, there are many more. There are mangroves, there are wetlands, grasslands, coral reefs, other landscapes which also sequester carbon. And as we all know, that nature-based solutions, they don't just have the potential to support broader climate strategies, but they also reduce disaster risk. They enhance livelihood benefits. They protect biodiversity, and as well as they provide ecosystem services. So if you see the overall forest cover of the world, which is around 4.06 billion hectares, that's about 31% of the global land area. And it's estimated that approximately 2.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide is absorbed by these forests each year. Now, coming to India, we have a forest cover of about 80.72 million hectares. These are the latest figures, which is about 24.56% of the India's geographical area. And one of the study conducted by Terry itself, it shows that just in year 2020, the total carbon sequestered by these forests were around 925.38 million tons of CO2. So we know that India is committed to achieving the nationally determined targets, which is basically creating an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. And we also know that the halting the loss and degradation of natural systems and promoting their restoration has the maximum potential, and it can contribute over 1/3 of the total climate change mitigation by 2030. So if you talk about nature-based solutions, some of the well-known examples are, we have the community-based governance models in India. There are one Panchayats in Uttarakhand, community conserved areas in Nagaland. Nature-based solutions, one of the example is also of coastal resilience. Can you hear me?
Yes, Siddharth, we can hear
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hence, there is a need to understand these nature-based solutions, and that is why this panel discussion will focus on that. Over to you, Chair. Dr. Negi, over to you, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes. So now you are on mute. Can you unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Is it all right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. I compliment the organizers for having this panel discussion on this very relevant topic, forestry and biodiversity. A lot has been said. The theme has been set for this panel discussion. There are three speakers, Mr. J.V. Sharma, Mr. Ajay Lal, and Mr. Sandeep Roy Chaudhary. First speaker would be Dr. J.V. Sharma. I invite him to give his remarks. We have about 45 minutes for this session. So I would request Dr. Sharma to conclude in about 10-12 minutes so that we can have time for other speakers as well as time for us. Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So the theme has been set by a keynote speaker as well as by Siddharth and the chairperson. The main aim of the Paris Agreement is to keep a global average temperature rise this century to well below 2 degrees Celsius and to drive efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level. The UNFCCC is also the parent treaty of the 1997 Kyoto Protocol. The ultimate objective of all agreements under the umbrella of the UNFCCC is to stabilize greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere at the level that will prevent dangerous human being interference system in a time frame which allows ecosystem to adapt naturally and enable sustainable development. The researches indicates the nature-based solutions can provide over 1/3 of the cost-effective climate mitigation. This fact has also been mentioned by Dr. Vinod Mathur. Needed between now and 2030 to stabilize warming to below 2 degrees, achieving nature's mitigation potential of 10 to 12 gigatons of the equivalent carbon dioxide per year. Investment in nature-based solutions will help reduce financial consequences of the climate change and contribute to the creation of new jobs, to the livelihood resilience, and to reduce people's poverty. Nature-based solutions underpins the Sustainable Development Goals, vital ecosystem services, biodiversity, and access to fresh water, improved livelihood, healthy diets, and food security from sustainable food system. The goal is to help conserve 30% of Earth's land and ocean by 2030, means popularly known as 30 by 30 targets, and contributes to goals under Paris Agreement through nature-based solutions by creating and expanding protected areas, restoring degraded ecosystem. How can it be done, and what kind of policies, regulatory and institutional interventions are required? If I take example of India, India is committed to achieve additional 2.5 to 3 billion tons of the equivalent carbon dioxide by addition forest and tree cover. It is one of the example of the nature-based solutions for mitigating climate change. In natural forest, India had a potential of around one-third, while agroforestry, the tree seedlings planted by the farmers, has two-third potential in order to achieve the whole NDC targets. First, as a national level, as a country level, we have to decide and we have to quantify it, how much target we have to achieve by 2030. Since two times addition of what has already been written in that, we think that it is over and above the business as usual. So that government needs to quantify the targets. The forestry sector in India is a concurrent subject under the Constitution of India. And central government, national government responsibility is the policy and planning only, while the implementation aspect lies with the state government. So that the state government need to be involved while achieving this target, and also the implementing the nature-based solutions to achieve this target, as well as mitigating climate change. If I take example of the carbon finance for the nature-based solutions here, there are only very few examples of the carbon finance in India. 10 ARCDM projects in Uttar Pradesh, the state of India, biocarbon project of the Himachal Pradesh, ARCDM project of ITC Bhadrachalam, Plan Vivo project of the Meghalaya, that is popularly known as Maflang project, and few here and there very small projects. Not a substantial potential has been tapped as far as carbon finance from the forestry sector or is concerned. Policy and regulatory framework provide grounds for the community-based forest governance, and the financial benefits are expected to transfer to the communities to take care of their additional income and motivate them for mitigating climate change through protection, conservation, and management of the forest and biodiversity. Here I'd like to give the example of the biodiversity management committees. And recently, more than 2.50 lakhs, 250,000 biodiversity management committees are in place, and people's biodiversity registers are under progress. But the main aspect is that how to tap the excess benefit sharing and pass on benefits to the grassroots level biodiversity management committee. It is a big challenge at the state level also, at the national level also, and so that we have to have work, and national biodiversity authorities and state biodiversity authorities are working on that. But the ground realities are different. The communities do not have the capacity to prepare the kind of a project for the carbon finance, such as ARCDM and the RDDD plus. Even forest bureaucracy, I'm emphasizing this fact, even forest bureaucracy lacks this capacity. TERI has initiated a project for providing financial benefits to the farmers recently in the 5 districts of Punjab, and going to initiate in the 4 districts of the Gujarat state through a carbon project under the agroforestry. And we have also initiated the carbon finance project in tiger reserves, which is in the final stage of the approval at the Government of India level. The technical committee of the National Tiger Conservation Authority has already approved it, so that as soon as maybe within a week or so, when it will be approved, then we'll initiate this work also. The additional finance through carbon projects will enhance the income of the farmer in agroforestry areas and reduce human-wildlife conflict while providing finance through carbon projects in protected areas. What is TERI doing? Doing a pilots and establishing a mechanism and methodologies. Major responsibilities lie with the Government of India and the state governments. They have to come up with a carbon neutrality policy under the principle of polluter pays principles of the Article 21 of the Constitution of India. But the Article 21 provides the clean and life and property, including the health and the clean environment. So the Honorable Supreme Court of India has further elaborated the Article 21 of the Constitution. This is the only fundamental right under the Constitution which applies to the all people living in the country. Not on this is the only rest other fundamental rights applies to the citizen of the nation, but this applies to the all people who even a foreign nationals applies to them also. Here I have some observations and rather request for the international communities to contribute towards offsetting their emissions through forestry and the agroforestry plantations and carbon credits, and also fund implementation projects. But it has also been observed that substantial portion of the funds provided to the developing countries under the bilateral agreements or multilateral agreements will go back to their respective countries through consulting organizations of their respective countries. So I request, if we like to implement the nature-based solutions, we have to have implementation projects. If the international community is really interested to use NbS as in forestry and biodiversity for mitigating climate change, they must focus on implementation and funding as well as offsetting their emissions through this process. What is expected from the Government of India? Carbon neutrality policy, empowering community for forest governance, and building capacity of frontline staff of the State Forest Department as well as the communities in the context of the carbon finance and forest and climate change issues. Another expectation is providing finance. The Finance Commission is providing finance for the forest and ecology. The 12th and 13th Finance Commission provided finance as a grant, which has been passed on to the sector. But the 14th Finance Commission provides 7.5% weightage to the dense forest, while it was a huge amount, 2,96,000 crore for the 5 years. But it has been researched and seen as that nothing has been passed on to by the state government because it was an untied fund from Finance Commission to the. It is a constitutional requirement. So that is why they have passed on to the state government, and the state government have not. As far as 1 year allocations under the 15th Finance Commission is a 10% for the forest and ecology. Again, this is an untied fund. And here I request the state forest bureaucracy that they also request their ministers and the chief ministers and the bureaucracy over there to pass on certain part of the funds towards the forest. Finance is very, very key and important. If adequate finance is not there, then how to implement the nature-based solutions for mitigating, though it has the potential. I like to conclude by saying that carbon finance is possible for nature-based solutions to mitigate climate change only if we have carbon neutrality policy and regulatory regime to implement it. Thank you very much for listening patiently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. J.V. Sharma, for your remarks, which have thrown light on many aspects. I now request the next speaker, Ajay Kumar Lal, to deliver his talk. Lal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to all distinguished participants. Ladies and gentlemen, India has been at the forefront of and in dealing and in finding nature-based solutions to environmental issues in general, and forests and biodiversity related issues in particular. Of course, carbon sequestration and climate change issue has now occupied the central stage, and now one of the most pressing challenges that humanity is facing today. India, if I can take you back to even more than 50 years to our 42nd constitutional amendments, perhaps one of the first countries to join upon, to inbuild, and to give responsibilities as fundamental duties of citizens to adhere to and conserve environment. Right from there, in spite of the fact that India was second most populous country, a developing economy, priorities were economic growth, priorities were to raise the income of the people. In spite of that, we took environment part as also one of our topmost priorities. From then up to naming of our independent ministry as Environment, Forest and Climate Change, perhaps the only one in the entire globe. Till recently, when last November 27th, and the government of India constituted that apex committee to implement Paris Agreement. Now coming to the carbon sequestration commitments, the voluntary commitment made in Paris and now being implemented across the country has also been acknowledged as a key driver of contributing towards mitigating and tackling the climate change adverse impacts. In order to that, as the target fixes 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent is to be sequestered, and additional tree and forest areas are to be created in order to achieve by 2030. Forest Survey of India has come out with very, very elaborate in-depth study and given us the possibility, the projections, and the proposals how to achieve that. And Government of India as well as state governments are definitely actively initiating many measures in order to do that. I would like to hear succinctly, I will like to just share a few thoughts, crystallized ones, for your consideration. The target, of course, is ambitious, and some of the critics even say that it is unachievable. However, if we look at the current scenario and in Indian context, we not only are assured that we can achieve that, but we are able to even go for measuring it and establishing it before the whosoever or international community. Three barriers which need to be addressed and which are in the process of being addressed definitely deserve mentioning here. The first barrier or the first key areas which warrant attention or at all levels, top level to the ground level, is definitely to get those additional around 22 to 24 million hectares of land for taking up tree or forest additional cover. At present, the scenario suggests that, of course, we have a potential area of 75.8 million hectares as brought out and divided into different land categories by the Forest Survey of India. Yet, one way and as a legal angle, if I can share, would be why not to concentrate on open forests, which together with shrub forest, more than 34%, 34 million hectares. Therefore, in the context of title, ownership, in context of many other likely some confusions, disputes, etc., since forest lands are more or less well-defined, scientifically being managed across the countries, those areas could be identified and could be taken up first to meet these additional area requirements, and then try to augment and try to sequester additional carbon targets as such. This, the first key barrier or challenge or requirement of having additional forest areas could be pursued or addressed like this. Now, the second area I would like to draw your attention is, of course, finance. Financial constraint. One of the earlier speakers was also mentioning about it, that on an average, as FSI has projected, we require 2.5 lakh crores in 10 years in order to meet that target of creating 2.5 billion tons of carbon equivalent, CO2 equivalent. That looks a big amount considering the size of the economy, considering the fact that, especially in these days post-COVID, now again the focus is shifting to allotment to the economic sectors. If we adopt, and many departments, ministries have taken that also, and a comprehensive, integrated, wholesome approach, interministerial pooling of funds, and not only that, invite, implement in PPP mode, which are very few examples at present in India. Invite corporate world, make them partners in afforestation or in plantation programs. In addition, very specific area which need certain focus is the amendment after Companies Laws 1956 in 2013, inserting that Article 135 of corporate social responsibility, and thereby giving responsibility to the corporates who are having a turnover more than say 500 crores, worth more than 500 crores and turnover more than 1,000 crores, to at least spend 2% of their net profit of the last 3 years on corporate social responsibility, CSR activities. So here lies huge money which can be definitely done, because they qualify. One of the activities they qualify to take is maintaining environmental stability. So why not? They can be invited, make partners, they can be even given responsibilities and duty. Thirdly, coming to another very broad barrier is definitely to establish so much of tons of carbon dioxide equivalent already sequestered. It is another very formidable challenge, and with our experience in Himachal Pradesh Medium Island Watershed Project, afforestation, reforestation, A&R project, we can say that validation and verification processes in the international scale, when there are certain inflexibilities, there are certain rigid requirements, validation and verifications, they are also very crucial to establish, yes, that much of carbon actually sequestered and then placed, submitted, and accepted by the international communities or the designated authorities. In order to do that, what are being done, but not in adequate force, and could be further be done with in increased priority, could be first to start with capacity building, starting from local level, primary stakeholders, to make them understand, to participate more actively, knowing them, then devising certain simple formats which could be approved prior to initiation of any activity or project, and then distributing those formats and standardized forms to each and every stakeholder at all levels. And thirdly, importantly, is to make your action or project slightly flexible. Inbuilt mechanism of such projects should contain invariably certain flexible scope so that if need be, if deviations are required, they become compulsory, then definitely they are taken into account. If we consider these definitely, and three broad areas or barriers or prerequisites: additional area, how to get, where to get, and what can be done; finances, 25,000 crores per annum, or 250,000 crores in next 10 years. And thirdly, a very systematic way of validation and verification, and then being able to project. Definitely, we are going to play, India is going to play in general a stellar role, and LULUCF forest sector could well contribute in finding very efficient and effective solution towards our collective global effort of mitigating or adapting climate change related adverse impacts. Thank you very much.
The national NbS which India has committed. I now request our last speaker for this session, Mr. Sandeep Chaudhary, please deliver his talk and give his views. Chaudhary.
Thank you, Mr. Negi, and thank you for Terry for having me here. I think I'm going to touch upon a couple of things that were mentioned during with my earlier panelists in terms of finance. I represent the private sector. I believe in complementing government efforts with private sector finance. Now, when we talk about the domestic private sector in India, the good part is Indian companies love forests, love trees, love farmers, love biodiversity. So whenever we talk about environment, and when we first started this conversation about carbon neutrality, say a decade back, I work for a company which develops projects on the ground. Whenever we talked about environment, the first thing that people would think about is let's plant trees. And I think that can be in our favor. When my previous speaker said that, there is a corporate social responsibility, 2%, et cetera, most companies in the country today, whenever they think of environment, they are planting trees. Now, a lot of it is happening ad hoc, not monitored, not possibly, done in an organized manner. And I do think that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity that we are working on in various respects. We are trying to work with implementation finance from the private sector, which also leads to carbon markets, and then carbon trading, and then finance that can be plowed back into the communities. A lot of times, forestry and biodiversity, and there is a stellar panel here, and I don't need to probably reiterate this, but forests are more about people rather than the trees. And alternative livelihoods, people, communities are an essential part of working with forestry, be it terrestrial or be it coastal, whether it be wetlands or whatever that we talk about. And I think there is a very good mix, especially in the domestic Indian scenario, of social responsibility, net zero carbon neutrality targets, as well as livelihood-based projects. And all of these three elements can make a lot of difference in the scale up. We ourselves as a company are working on about 1.5 million hectares of forest agriculture in the country based on private sector finance, which is obviously complemented with different regulatory bodies and government bodies, partners such as Terry we are working with. So there are different kinds of partners that it's a multi-stakeholder approach, yes. I think the financing is there. I think what we lack right now is, even if today, and we have clients who are looking at net zero targets and want to really deploy natural vegetation, but where? It's always a challenge that we are asked. And then when we go to regulatory agencies or other forest departments, they are like, we lack financial resources. So I think there has to be some form of knowledge sharing here, capacity building to the extent that there is available finance. How do we tie this up? to possible regulatory frameworks, or make it, because I think money, in my respect, I don't think money is the big problem here. I think understanding where can work be done and more effectively. So I think that's where we need to come in, take in elements of ecosystem, service payments, involve communities within programs. I think, we have a very top-down approach towards forest. Let's take 100 hectares, plant trees. I don't think that approach works or will work in scale up of these kind of projects, or in our meeting our NDCs and so on and so forth. So I do think there is a race by Indian companies. In fact, we had 28 Indian companies signing up on a net zero pledge about a month back. We are working with a few of them. All of them want to contribute to watershed, want to contribute to biodiversity. We always face this challenge of scale ourselves whenever we want to deploy projects. And I do think that if there is, more, things that we could work with on the community level, understand that capacity needs to be at the forest community level, it needs to be at the DFO forest level, then going upwards. I think that's where we could create a lot of value. And I do believe blended instruments are the order of the day. When I say blended instruments within the financial services, we have carbon finance, we have debt finance that is doing the rounds now for forest community. Non-timber forest produce has value. How do we look at that value? We have been traditionally looking at just taking non-timber forest produce and having a supply chain, but what about putting processing centers where this forest produce, non-timber forest produce is coming out from, to increase value for the communities? And that's how I think we can make business plans out of nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions is a fancy term that has just come 3 years back. Forests and biodiversity has been around for a while. How to make it work is basically, in my opinion, start creating financial value. One clear financial value, like Dr. JV mentioned, is carbon markets. That's a definitive value that you create for the private sector to be involved in. Number two is we can use various, working capital requirements within, forest producer organizations, trying to work with climate resilient blended finance models, climate bonds, etc. But none of them will work in silo. If there is an element of regulatory framework from the policymakers and not money will come in. And I think that's something that we could spend some time on. There are case studies there that could be shared with other stakeholders within the country, and there we could have something that we could build up upon reaching this lofty target that we have of meeting our NDCs and carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration means there is already a value in that, and that's something that we really need to tap into, and that complemented with different kinds of community business models, that's really important. That could probably be unlocking the finance part that we have been debating or deliberating on in this session. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary. I'm glad that you have touched upon the role of communities, which is very important. Without the involvement of communities, I don't think targets are achievable. And we also need to look at policy issues, both at the national level as well as the state level. Each state probably has a different perspective. State has different demographic conditions between, so it cannot be one size fits all. We have some time for question and answer. I don't see any great questions on the screen unless I don't know. Siddharth, can you see questions on the screen?
Sir, actually, due to paucity of time, we cannot take questions now because the next session has to start. So I would, sir, can I please request you to conclude then?
Okay. So we have been through a very wide landscape of issues which are involved in forestry and biodiversity, as far as nature-based solutions in carbon sequestration. We have immense opportunities. The panelists have built upon these immense opportunities. But at the cost of repeating, we need policies as well as implementation strategy at the national level and at the state level. It will be difficult to implement any nature-based solution without involving the community, because they are the major stakeholders. We cannot work in isolation. We cannot have carbon sequestration, or we cannot have carbon neutrality without involving the communities. This is one aspect which we stress. And as Dr. J.V. Sharma has said, the capacity building of not only the communities, but also the capacity building of forestry staff, the forest bureaucracy, and also the change of mindset is required. So I end this session. I thank all the panelists. I thank all the participants for their views, and I'm sure there will be many more sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the chair and all the eminent speakers for sharing their valuable input. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now start the second panel discussion, focusing on agriculture-related nature-based solutions and their role in carbon sequestration. The panel will be chaired by Dr. Alka Bhargav. Dr. Bhargav is a 1987 batch IFS officer from Assam Meghalaya cadre and is presently working as Additional Secretary, Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare in Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. The panelists for this session are Mr. Umakant, Joint Secretary, Department of Land Resources, Ministry of Rural Development, Dr. Reena Singh, Associate Director, Sustainable Agriculture Division in TERI, and Mr. Anirban Ganguly, Research Specialist, South Asia Research Hub of FCDO. Just again, a quick announcement. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, please type them into question and answer box. In case we do have some time, the chair will bring them up at the end during the designated question and answer session. Before we begin, may I request Dr. Yogesh Gokhale, Senior Fellow TERI, to give a brief introduction to the theme for this panel. Dr. Gokhale.
Thank you, Siddharth. We are running short of time, so I'll quickly have a review at the various aspects which agriculture as an NbS we can think about. NbS has been talked about as a cost-effective solution. Of course, all NbS solutions are not necessarily a new knowledge, but it could be a reinvention of existing solutions and traditional ecological knowledge, which could be seen with the climate perspective. And NbS can potentially be a critical component for preparations towards COP26. Now, as was talked about, research has shown that there are more than 20 types of activities which can potentially form as nature-based solutions for conservation, restoration, and improved land management practices, and that can substantially reduce the required funds to tackle climate change, and that fund could be something like $10 per ton. That is the cost of NbS that is anticipated. Now, the situation is that as a part of agriculture, there could be a number of strategies and activities which could be talked about as a part of NbS. But most importantly, any solution needs to be holistic and not only sectoral in nature, where agriculture cannot be seen independent of soil management, traditional practices, cultivars, and ecosystem services, and so on. So, like for example, if we think of the supplying or cultivating medicinal plants through agriculture, then it could be an interesting solution, because the cultivation of medicinal plants would form a sustainable harvesting as practice from the wild, as well as it would also provide an opportunity in agriculture sector to grow the medicinal plants. There are several strains as well as opportunities in this manner. So the nature-based solutions in agriculture would necessarily look forward to value chains for sustainable production, enhanced soil productivity, and soil carbon. That would be an important aspect of NbS. There are a number of allied aspects of integrated farming, such as organic indigenous crop varieties, safeguarding traditional knowledge of farming, livestock management, local food security, and nutrition that could become important for developing locally specific solutions, leading to reduction in carbon emission due to agriculture and enhancing soil carbon. There are a number of movements which are operational, such as slow food, which are opposing fast food culture, groups conserving traditional cultivars and indigenous livestock breeds, and so on. There are some of the interesting global examples which are also supported by Convention on Biological Diversity, like One Planet Business for Biodiversity, which is committed to scale up regenerative agriculture practices with an emphasis on soil health. And also, recarbonization of global soils, which is supported by FAO, called REC soil, where the recarbonization of global soils constituting an implementing facility for scaling up of soil organic carbon centered measures. So I think there is a manual compiled by United Nations which talks about over 200 such kinds of NbS practices. But what is more important is that there is a need to recognize these practices as solution and contextualize those to promote through and promote through conducive policy environment. So I think I pass it on the mic to Chair Dr. Alka Bhargav and requesting her to begin the session. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Yogesh, for putting the session in perspective. And in fact, also good afternoon, Dr. Mathur, because some of the things which you highlighted in the keynote, your keynote, will be very apt for the agriculture sector too. And in fact, I'll take 2 minutes because since we are short of time, it would be good if we can hear the other panelists too. But just as a backdrop, like, the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture is the major flagship program within the National Action Plan for Climate Change, which is kind of arming us to deal with climate change issues. And under this, we have a cross-sectoral 10 points, which are quarterly reported upon to MOEF. So in that, there are a number of things which are cutting across with NbS also, like the area under organic farming, which right now we have about 28 lakh hectares in the country. And in the coming 5 years, we are aiming to bring in 25 lakh more. And together with that, we also have a program for certification of traditionally organic areas. So this has been just launched about a month or 2 months back, and we have started getting proposals from Lakshadweep, Ladakh, some areas in the Northeast, and we are encouraging the states to send in these proposals so that they can get organic certification, and that will lead to, better remuneration for the farmers also. Then production of biofertilizers is another point which we quantify quarterly. Precision agriculture, which, as you know, there's a concerted focus on bringing more area under micro-irrigation, which we call as per drop more crop under the major umbrella scheme of PMKSY. 48 lakh hectares have been done till now, which is not a very big number considering the expanse of the irrigated area in our country. And 100 lakh are to be covered in the coming 5 years. But this is on an upward growing trajectory, the area under micro-irrigation. Then rice is a major contributor of greenhouse gases. So we're trying to wean the farmers to the SRI as well as the direct seeded rice methodologies. And this has come in focus and has been adopted more in this pandemic period, because there was shortage of labor in some places and all. So obviously they had to go to mechanization, which is also a good fallout of this crisis situation which we are in. Then additional area under plantation in arable land is quantified. That is both agroforestry, horticulture, and other tree-borne oil seeds, the oil palms, etc. are being quantified. Then most important is the release of the climate resilient varieties by ICR. So this has, this has actually been proved by the continuous upward record production of food grain and horticulture, which the country is having. So I think we are quite well equipped to handle the climate change issues. And then the 8th point is identification of genotypes of crops with enhanced carbon dioxide fixation potential and less water consumption. and nutrients, as well as climate resilient genotypes with greater adaptation to drought, flood, salinity, and high temperature. So this is again within the climate resilient varieties. And two important things which relate to animal husbandry, big contributor to methane is the coverage of milch animals under ration balancing program and establishment of bypass protein feed making unit. So these are the things which we are having a concerted quantification program. And apart from this, I mean, everyone is aware of our flagship program of ICR NICRA, the National Initiative on Climate Resilient Agriculture, where a lot of these good practices are being collated and implemented in 121 districts, covering about 1 lakh farmers. And in this, about 21 central institutions and other state universities are associated. But when we talk about NbS, then the main thing which we would like to flag is the organic farming and the natural farming, which is called as Bharatiya Prakratik Krishi Paddhati, BPKP, which does not involve use of any kind of fertilizers. It's more of a community mobilization and use of things like Jivamrit and Bijamrit, all locally produced by the farmers themselves. So here we are converging strongly with the rural development, where they have very vibrant NRLM groups. And here also, I mean, Andhra is a forerunner in this, Gujarat, Himachal, Uttarakhand, UP, they've also started sending their proposals. And I mean, when we come to the panelists, I would request also to just look at some of the issues which were raised in the earlier session on financing, then role of each citizen, which was flagged by Dr. Mathur, and capacity building, co-creation. And this actually talks about a cross-sectoral approach, because which was also mentioned by the earlier panelist. I mean, very happy and very heartening to note that the top corporate companies, private sector companies, including Tata, Reliance, Mahindra, ITC, Dalmia Cements, they signed a declaration on a voluntary pledging to move towards carbon neutrality. So just a case in point is Dalmia Cements, probably after this signing only, they had approached us to get assistance of how they can raise bamboo plantations in the Northeast, because they have about, I think, 3 units in the Northeast, and then they can use that as an alternate fuel. So we put them in touch with the state mission directors to, it would be a win-win, because the communities or the forest bamboo could be used for firing these plants and reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So coming to my esteemed panelists, Umakant, when you speak, I mean, it would be good if like you were heading the watershed development component of PMKSY. So what could be the role of watershed development component in reducing greenhouse gases and promoting sustainable agriculture, especially in rain-fed and degraded lands? And how that could also increase water use efficiency and, like we had been discussing, change from flood to micro-irrigation. So over to you, Umakant.
Thank you, ma'am, and very good evening to all esteemed guests. And it was very enriching deliberation, and speakers have flagged so many issues. I was fortunately present in both the sessions, so I could get the benefit of the deliberation bit. Ma'am, I understand that the subject for today's discussions and deliberations, nature-based solutions, could not be more appropriately fitted as of now, because the cost of implementation of the strategy has been a big barrier to us. Therefore, I understand that ultimately what Gandhiji used to say, that there is everything available, enough available for the necessity of the individual, not for the meeting the greed. This is the bottom line where we are today, and we should try to capitalize on those strengths, especially keeping India in perspective, ma'am, when we are almost 2/3 of population staying on the degraded areas, and these people are having the production and productivity of those areas. And therefore, see, the statistics says that almost 1.36 billion population of the country, per capita availability of land is hardly 0.24 hectare. whereas world average is 0.9 hectare, ma'am. However, agriculture, if you see, this is much, much lesser. Hardly per capita availability of land is 0.12 hectare, whereas world is 0.29 hectare. So giving this perspective, we try to understand and rationalize that a country like India is very well placed to harness the availability of land in the degraded categories. Therefore, the relevance of this scheme becomes very important so far as the nature-based solutions are concerned. A little bit of perspective what the approach up to now Government of India has done in the past, starting from 70s when the desert development program was there, drought-prone area program was there. Both proved quite good because they were sporadically taking up project areas. But at a later point of time, when Hanmant Rao committee dwell upon it, and they give the concept that these exercises, these project areas should be taken on the basis of watershed. And then after almost 94 onwards, we have been addressing degraded areas, especially keeping the watershed delineation in mind. And from there, we are very much aware that the IWMP project was in 2014-15 amalgamated as one of the components of PMKSY. Since then, the outcome has been very, very promising. And that gives me a very good hope that this scheme is going to give us a solution which will address the land development as well as will also cater to the needs of those people who are really small, marginal and landless and assetless people settled in those areas. Therefore, since 2008-9, the statistics shows that almost 20 million hectare area has been developed. Of course, there are so many, I would say, the achievements in terms of water harvesting structures, additional area brought under plantation and protective irrigation. Farmers have been benefited, employments have been generated, plantations have been raised. So many scope are open to us now. I will cite Honorable Prime Minister's quote on the occasion of UNCCD held in the month of September last year, where the commitment as part of the Government of India's commitment in the UNCCD for having 26 million hectare area to be addressed and developed for the purpose of land degradation neutrality. It's a huge commitment. So far, we have been meeting the bone challenge of 21. Now, Honorable Prime Minister has given a call to increase it by 5 million hectare. And I foresee, and that's why Government of India has taken the initiative to get new generation of watershed development component again under the umbrella of PMKSY. I'm hopeful that under the given scenario where the corona pandemic has put yet another challenge, but this program will come up and we will be addressing the degraded land, rainfed, especially the rainfed and degraded land category of area in a positive way, and will provide necessary help to the farmers, especially the smaller ones, as I mentioned earlier, to harness those areas, develop those areas, and put their best efforts to get maximum benefit, raising the production and productivity. I could see in the last session, Sandeep was available, and one of the meetings that I earlier had in Terry, where the CSR activities were being discussed. I would request Sandeep that in this program I'm talking about, there is huge scope for your companies or companies like yours to chip in and could help the farmers. Because one of the limitations in the field is the actual upscaling of their efforts. People are growing on those areas, say amla plantation, but the overall income is very, very meager. Anybody would approach, buy amla, take it away from those areas. Therefore, their employment is gone. They they are not encouraged about taking up more areas under such plantations. The orchard I could see in the field was the mango plantation. These are the cash crop that could be harnessed very well. And there I find the role of CSR would be very, very promising. Fortunately, in the new guidelines, which we are going to, we are hopeful to launch very shortly after getting the approval of competent authority, the new guideline, we have now captured the climate change challenges, and we are very particular about the soil organic carbon, which was still hitherto it was not there. Therefore, the soil organic carbon enrichment was not taken care of. Of course, there are technical issues involved for the purpose of measurement of those soil organic carbon. We have also incorporated the concept of FPO, wherein, as I mentioned, the scale of production is very much necessary for a country like India to perform, because we have been taking actions, we have been deliberating, but ultimately, as Negi sir also mentioned, the community has to shoulder the responsibility. And I'm a firm believer that the community would like to contribute to the fullest of their capacity if the leadership role is given to them. I have seen, and I would like to quote the Mantri area of Rajasthan near Udaipur, where Shamsundar Paliwal has been a very, very polite person who contributed tremendously. And that area has become a very, very fanciful, full of so much forest. Even in the Rajasthan area, during daylight, there is complete darkness. That shows the kind of leadership which can bring about change, and forestry activities have gone up. I have seen horticulture activities have gone up in terms of giving employment to the people, raising income to the people, and at the same time, degraded areas have been retrieved. And of course, the purpose of natural solution for the ecosystem services have been secured. Another example I would like to put at the Ralegaon Siddhi, which is very, very famous area. Hibre Bazar is the third area in Maharashtra. In all these examples which I am quoting, I am very, very particular about it when I say that the leadership role is very, very important. Community has to take part, but the driver should be selfless. That is one of the areas where the scientists, where the bureaucrats, where the common men should come together and join their hands. This is my one, I would say, appeal to the private sector as well to chip in yourself. And there are occasions. Let me cite the example where Niti Aayog has done a good amount of work for zero budget natural farming. Ma'am must have been informed about it. There was initiative. I am not conversant in recent past, but I understand that the government of India has taken initiative to put organic material in the land so that their productivity could be raised at the same time. The quality could not be compromised. Sikkim has been doing well, we all understand. MOEFCC has taken a very good initiative to involve the Department of Land Resources. A few days back, tree outside forest was discussed, and I am very positive about having the mapping done in some of the states in initial hours, so that we can understand the potential of that area, agroclimatic suitability of plantation to be selected, and then production could be very well managed. Agroforestry has been discussed time and again. This degraded land, I believe that Department of Land Resources is having a good data resource, and the institutional structure is available in all the states. All 28 states, partner states are there, where state level nodal agencies are there, and they are having infrastructure where the handholding should be sufficient to bring about results.
Makan, can we just close?
Just 2 minutes, ma'am. Another very important area is the spring shades map. All Indian Himalayan region states have come with the Niti Aayog, and with the help of Niti Aayog, I have incorporated one of the components as spring sheds in the watershed areas. So all the special category states would be taking advantage of the this component also. So finally, understand there are so many things. GKRA has taken place, and the migratory levels who have gone back to their native places should be retained, so that the mushrooming of unplanned towns and urbanization would not take place. So many things are there, ma'am. Finally, I would like to conclude that the solutions is the answer, ma'am, and this is the golden opportunity to involve and to take the community on board, and we can meet the requirement of NDC through LDN. The SDG goal could be achieved as the nation is committed for it. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you all the esteemed partners.
Thank you. Thank you. I would request Dr. Reena Singh, and since you're a mycorrhizologist, I mean, your views on importance of soil health vis-a-vis the country's focus on integrated nutrition management and integrated pest management being promoted under organic and natural farming. And Umakant, the one which you refer to, zero budget farming, that has been termed as BPKP, Bharatiya Paddhati, yeah. So that is where we are pitching that in. And so, Reena, and drawing in best practices from some of the externally funded projects you've been engaged in. I read in your bio about the Swiss and the Finnish projects. So that'll be good. And also we could get some inklings also, because we've just had 2 rounds of massive soil health card program. I mean, across the globe, I think these many numbers would never have been imagined. About 11 crores in the first phase, and similarly around 11.5 in the second phase. So we are equipped with huge amounts of reliable data. So how do we use that? It has already been, I mean, there are recommendations both for chemical and organic fertilizers on the soil health card, crop-wise recommendations. So that is being used. But we would like to pick your brains, being from the microbiology side, of how do we sustain soil health, because even though the pressures of production and increasing productivity is there. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Dr. Singh. Now I can't hear you, I think. Can the others hear? Because I can't.
No, ma'am.
We can't hear you, Dr. Reena.
Can we move to Mr. Ganguly till the time Dr. Reena is fixing up her system? Because I think I can see her talking, but I can't hear her. Can someone just call her? Yeah. Yeah. So I think, yeah. Yeah, Yogesh, just call up Dr. Singh and just fix up her system. And Mr. Ganguly, how would you compare the policies for climate change of India vis-a-vis other South Asian countries on one hand, and on the other, a developed country like UK, which was referred to in the opening session also, especially with reference to natural resource management and sustainable agriculture?
Thanks for the question. I'm trying to keep my video off because I'm having some bandwidth issues. My apologies for that. I think your question is absolutely valid at this point because, as we all know, the next COP26 is being hosted by the UK, and UK is now playing a major role in sort of forming the global negotiating position on several of these issues. Now, in terms of the specific issues, if you want me to make a comparison between India and other countries of the South Asian region? My short answer will be that this is really a shared geography, and many of the issues which are relevant for India are equally relevant for other parts of this region, particularly in the context of.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Now you're audible, Dr. Singh. Can you just come after Mr. Ganguly?
Yeah, sure. I was just testing. Okay.
Yeah. You're perfectly okay now. Thanks.
Yes, I was just saying that these South Asian region share a common geography. And I think the major issue which is cross-cutting across this region is the competing pressure of land use, especially between forestry and agriculture. And one observation that was made earlier in the day was that almost, I mean, a large part of the problem rests with the uncontrolled expansion of certain kinds of commercial agriculture and its integration with the international trading system. The reference was made, for example, to palm oil. Now, this is an important issue, and because India, for example, is one of the largest consumers of this agricultural resource, it's very important that effective collaboration is worked out between all the stakeholders in this. In terms of the UK government's position, again, this was referred earlier, it's important to say that the transition from a forest agriculture competing landscape to a just agricultural landscape, a just rural transition is the phrase that is being used. That is at the core of the UK's position in this context. And you will be aware that the Climate Action Pledge, which was made last year and was reiterated this year, refers to several of these issues. That's my answer to your question. But should I continue or should Dr. Reena take over now?
Madam, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, this would depend on the organizers if we have to finish by 5:30 or we can spill over for maybe 10 minutes more. So yeah, Mr. Ganguly, I think you can go for it. Yeah, you can have a couple of minutes more.
Okay, that's challenging. So I was hoping to get a bit more, but in that case, I will move to straight away a couple of examples which I wanted to share. One is a direct example of a UK Government of India collaboration. This is the program which is currently being supporting the MORD. This is called Infrastructure for Climate Resilient Growth. Under this program, basically, Government of UK is working with the Government of India to increase the climate resilience of infrastructure that is being created under the Manrega program. So this is not a large-scale intervention. This is a pilot demonstration activity where technical capacities of various stakeholders in the Manrega chain are being developed. The key part here is that how one can integrate climate risk assessments into the planning level in terms of watershed structures or even larger scale geospatial planning. And there are early results which are quite interesting here. There are good data to suggest that even in the first few years of such technical enhancement, the difference in agricultural productivity and agricultural values between areas which have got the benefit of improved planning and those that have not is in the order of 5 to 6 percentage points in a couple of years, which is going to go up. So that's one example I wanted to give. And the second example I just wanted to give is about the issue of how does one actually capture the tremendous carbon mitigation co-benefit of land practices. Now in the morning session, in the earlier session, I should say, this was already being referred to, saying that climate, I mean, the land use based practices, agriculture, forestry, nature-based solutions in today's language can contribute up to 1/3 of cost-effective mitigation benefits of total cost of benefits. Now, we have some practical examples of that under the I referred to. A study was conducted at a national scale by IISc Bangalore, which basically looked at the net carbon mitigation potential of activities which would essentially qualify as resilience or adaptation activity. Under this scenario, under aggressive scenarios, the net carbon mitigation potential was estimated at 250 million tons if projected to 2030, which is quite substantial in terms of, for example, India's NDC commitments. Just wanted to flag that as an example. The second example I wanted to flag is the issue which was raised earlier, that how the nature-based solutions can provide a large range of environmental and ecosystem services. Now, one thing that is quite recent in everybody's memory is, of course, Amphan and the other cyclonic storms. Now, there was a study which was conducted a few years back, and there are several of these kinds of studies which actually correlate mangrove cover to the to the reduction in storm damage, particularly impacting on the agricultural fields. And if I can quickly quote a figure to place the broader figures in perspective. Now, if you look at, for example, a couple of cyclones in recent memory, Isla, for example. Now, these, the mangrove cover, they were giving us a protection of value of in the order of 25 to 28,000 rupees annually per kilometer of distance of the agricultural field from the mangrove forest, and that was incrementally going up as you get closer to the mangrove forest. That is a clear example of co-benefit of a nature-based solution approach. To say on the one hand that these recurrent loss of agricultural productivity due to salinization and various other environmental hazards which we associate with cyclones, how they can quickly convert to a monetary benefit if it's converted in that sense. But the flip side of the story is that at the same time, the forest protection committees, which were responsible for a large part of the conservation effort, we had tracked them, and the net increment of the carbon stock was also quite significant, about 110 tons per hectare, which is almost 30% over the baseline. I just wanted to flag these two quick examples to say that nature-based solutions, whether we apply to the forestry sector or to the agriculture sector or land use change sector, can convert to quite tangible gains at the ground level, which is a different thing to say when we say that the value of the ecosystem services are, say, $1 trillion. These values actually translate to quite tangible, realistic values at the ground level. Just one final point before I close. The point that was made earlier is that nature-based solutions in the forestry and agricultural sectors, they provide cost-effective mitigation options beyond producing adaptation and resilience benefits. I would also like to add it's not just cost-effective, it's equity-effective, in the sense that the large part of the benefit from nature-based solution flows to people who have lesser incomes and lesser of coping capacity against hazardous climate events. That's a clear co-benefit one needs to identify. And when we talk of finances or we talk of designing programs, this is an angle which one needs to actively consider and monitor, in the sense that it's not just a large volume of benefits that we get incrementally. It's also the very different distribution of these benefits when you compare with more tech-focused solutions. Thank you.
Yeah, we are looking at
Yeah. Thank you so much. In fact, we didn't have time. It would have been really good to hear more of your examples. And Dr. Singh, if you can come in now.
Sorry for that interruption at that point of time. And since we are running short of time, so I am not going into the data and the generals of the emissions in agriculture per se, because the experts and the background has already been covered. So I will briefly make the technological interventions that Sustainable Agriculture Program of TERI is doing in the field of climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. In agriculture, as we know that the fertilizer and the crop residue management, these are the two areas where there is a maximum emissions. Definitely the strong first is the enteric fermentation. So we have not worked on that. We have dealt with the fertilizer management and with the crop residue management. With the fertilizer management, we have generally worked on the mycorrhiza organobiofertilizers and other biofertilizers. And here I would like to talk about the project that we have undertaken in this project. The thing that I want to highlight is it is just any strain you can pick and you can apply and start using. No, it's very important to select the good strains. Going for the selections, we have selected the isolates, those strains from the fields where the farmers were just applying very low input of fertilizers, but still they were very getting higher yield. So we were very astonished. Okay, this farmer is not applying any fertilizers. So how the field is giving a very good yield. So when we collected and isolated and we collected beautiful strains from that particular site, we have isolated and we have mass produced it, and we were very successful in that project. The technology was transferred to the industry, and it is now industry is giving those strains and it is being used across the country. We worked on basically wheat cropping systems. So it is not only wheat, rice, other cropping system we have practiced and we have applied those strains. So that was very good. And the farmers, they were able to save 50% to 100% of the chemical fertilizer. So I'm not saying 100% in all cases, because it also depends upon how deficient the soil is. So if there is the deficiency in soil, so apart from these organic fertilizers, it's combination of either go for some organic manures or it's kind of an integrated nutrient management. You just apply that particular nutrient which is missing in the soil. So that we did, and we were able to do that. And this was demonstrated across the farmers fields, and they were validated by different agricultural universities and how already there in the package of practices. Here I would like to say, like, it is not like that our technology should be like that okay, we should look at the government, they should give some support to us, financial support for its push. No, we believe the technology should be cost competitive. So we kind of done those kind of innovations that okay, it is able to match up with the fertilizers. And we are not in that idea of that okay, looking at government to give subsidies like for fertilizers the government is giving. No, it should be a cost effective and a very good technology, because our experience with working with farmers is this, like whenever there is a good technology, when they see the results, they are ready to actually take it. So they are, whenever we go, they're looking for good technologies. So what is our experience is, like wherever anybody talks in the forum, no, we need a push, our experience is entirely opposite. If there is a good technology, we always find there are good takers for those technologies. And we were successful in technology transfers to our technology. Many industries, they have taken our technology, we have given it to the global industries also. We are also giving our products to Europe and North American market. So it is kind of a very good technology, I will say. And when we have also done the life cycle analysis, because how the production of that biofertilizers is affecting it, because it's not only the reduction in the chemical fertilizer, even the production of that whatever biofertilizers that we are doing, it should also be carbon neutral. So we could find, okay, it's not adding cost and not adding emissions during the production process. So that aspect also we have taken care of. Now, with coming to the crop residue, I will say, like, we worked, this is one of the project where 23 institutes of Europe, they were involved, and we worked on how to manage the residues, because the farmers, they were burning the crop residues, and because not wheat, definitely rice, because wheat, they had the competitive uses. So we kind of did the feasibility analysis, because many people, many scientists and many organizations, they were recommending, okay, one should go for this the biofuel production, the energy generation from the residues. But what we could gather, what we found from the survey, wheat residue we don't have. Even if somebody is saying, okay, you can take it, no, there is no excessive. I mean, farmers, they don't have wheat residues because they have the uses. So they are not burning that. But with the rice residues, because it has high silica content, yes, there is a problem, and they do not have any competitive uses. And the time window, everybody knows it's very short, because between the rice and the wheat. So we did those kind of a feasibility analysis, and a lot of technologies were worked out in that, not only biofuels, but definitely other bioproducts, so that it becomes a kind of an economically feasible, because until the technologies are economically feasible, they cannot be taken up. But towards the end of this project, because it's kind of a consortia project, we realized, okay, we have the technologies, we have the sustainability, but definitely it was not cost effective for the industries. So we did a lot of work. Pardon?
We can't get you, Yogesh. Your voice is really cracking. I believe you must be saying to wrap up.
Okay, so I'm wrapping up. So that is one. And yes, so I will just talk about one more nano fertilizer, which is basically, it's kind of a, you just give the fertilizers in the nano form. So you just give it in grams instead of the kilograms. So it is saving a lot of fertilizer emissions. So that is one thing. I also wanted to talk about sequestration projects, but maybe we can leave it because we have short of time.
Yeah. So thank you so much. In fact, we would want to talk further on these aspects of the fertilizer use, which you pointed out, and if you have more new technology, because these are the things which we are focusing on, including nano fertilizers, because the nano nitrogen, copper, and boron, the trials have already been done between IFCO and ICR. So, I mean, the results are fairly positive.
Yes, they're encouraging. Yeah. And we also worked on the guidelines, because the push for nano is like this, there was no guidelines. So Terry worked on the guideline documentability and all those things, so that there is a push. Because otherwise industries and others, they were very skeptic, whether to use it or not. Because if there is no regulation in place, then we cannot promote that. So we can talk.
In fact, I don't think any country as such is using nano in any substantial volumes. Yeah. So because and then your trials on the mycorrhiza also would be interesting. And the strains, if you say they're already into industrial production, I mean, these would be really good. And the more we can get into the FCO, the better it would be for regulating the quality, etc. Yeah, that will be great. And in fact, Mr. Ganguly also, I mean, the things which you touched upon, in fact, one thing, because of paucity of time, Terry, please give us more time next time when we are having these discussions, is that we really don't have any carbon credit or mitigation projects in agriculture per se. I mean, there's only one I could see in water management in India I talk about. And for maintaining soil health or reducing methane emissions, we could probably have many more. So probably we could work with the farmers in that context. And also, we've been hearing about ecosystem services for a pretty long time, but we've not been able to add the payment as yet. The payment for ecosystem services. I mean, if we can actualize that, we are looking at an agroecology project in a couple of states where I really want to put in this PES into it, so that when the farmers or the local communities see the actual benefits, the tangible quantified benefits from conservation and ecosystem services, I think they would be very welcome to the concepts. But exactly, I mean, you did hit the right thing, that the farmers, if you're given the right technology with the right economic backup of what returns they're going to get, I mean, they're very open to new systems. So, I mean, this has been a great conversation, and I mean, my three panelists. I mean, this is a cross-sectoral convergence completely, government, private, and international. So the takeaways have been really good. And Terry, I'm sure you would be compiling all the recommendations within this short. Maybe we got just about half an hour or 35 minutes. So we would look forward to it and maybe carry on the conversation as required. Yeah, thank you so much for giving us this space.
Certainly, certainly, Dr. Bhargav, certainly, and very thanks to all the panelists as well as Dr. Negi and other panelists in the previous session. Yes, a very important take-home message is that in the nature-based solutions they need to sort of be looked in terms of monitoring. They need to be looked in terms of developing the projects which can be applicable for carbon credits. And there is a need of a bit of research in that, because there is a lack of methodology, accepted methodologies for that. And I think this is one of the major findings that most of the panelists have talked about. Anirban also has talked about need of such kind of accounting, and so that we can actually claim the benefits from that. I think this was a very interesting discussion, because it's an emerging field in terms of accounting for carbon from nature-based solutions. And for a country like India, where we have been investing on such works and such programs through government schemes, it's a great opportunity for government also to look at the effort, to see their efforts actually reaching up to reducing the carbon emission from various developmental sectors. Thanks a lot. And we also requested to join another webinar tomorrow for adaptation and resilience, and the information is also available on Terry's website. We will circulate the recording as well as minutes of this this webinar for all the participants. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.